Welcome. I'm Jeremiah Reiner, and this is the Deeply Rooted Podcast. Hey there, and welcome to Deeply Rooted. I'm Jeremiah Reiner, your host. Thank you guys for joining. This is episode 129, and we've got a really exciting conversation coming up in just a moment. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give us a like on our YouTube channel and on Apple Podcast. You can also find us on our website, deeplyrootedpodcast.com. We've got blog posts. We've also got all of our archived episodes that will lead you directly to our YouTube link. And you can also check out our upcoming ministry schedule, which we will try to talk about later on in the episode as we close about the upcoming Deeply Rooted Conference. So hang tight there. Plenty of information to share with you regarding that. You can also find us on our Facebook group page. If you haven't joined that, please do so. We'd love to build our audience and interact and share prayer requests, concerns, or maybe if you have something interesting that you'd like us to cover. We'd love to hear from you, and we try to get that episode lined out in the future if we possibly can. But having said all that, really excited again tonight to be able to sit down with a new friend. Apparently, though, I have no idea how we haven't crossed paths long before this, but somehow we haven't. But here we are in God's grace, and we're meeting tonight with Brother Travis Hilton. Travis is the pastor of Crystal Springs Baptist Church. That's in Roanoke, Virginia. He's a graduate of the University of Virginia's College at Wise, and he's also a graduate of Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary as well. And Travis is married to his lovely wife, Amy, and they share 2 adult children together. So Travis, God bless you, brother. Thank you for being on the Deeply Rooted Podcast.
It's great to be with you and to finally meet Jeremiah Reiner.
Yeah, the voice behind it all.
This is just meant to be. I knew, as I told you, that eventually I think I was going to meet you, but also because I'd seen on Facebook where my mother-in-law had shared many of your quotes through the years, and I saw that we had a lot of things in common. But now I can get extra points with my mother-in-law that I'm being interviewed by you.
Yeah, so this is brownie
my
points.
Mother-in-law.
Yeah,
so
for Travis.
I know she's going to appreciate that.
Yeah, we'll have to give her a big shout out for that, and thank you for listening. And we appreciate her sharing the Facebook post as well. So thank you for getting the word out there.
Absolutely.
Quick question here right off the bat. What's the sermon series you're going through right now at your church?
We're going through the Gospel of Luke.
Oh, that sounds very familiar.
Yeah, I heard that you were doing that.
We are. We started there just when we planted. So what chapter are you guys in?
We are in chapter 6. We're going to take a couple of Sundays to focus on the death and resurrection of Christ. So we'll probably be in other Gospels, just utilizing that for our messages for the next couple of Sundays. But we'll get back to the Gospel of Luke. Been enjoying that.
Yeah. Also noticed that you guys were working through, I believe, a midweek study through a book. Is that correct?
Well, we actually we had been focusing on Bible intake and prayer and how those two go together, and that's where we have been. And but I've been doing a couple of extra things lately, and I shared last Wednesday night. We just and it was really actually a segue from what I'd been preaching on Sunday morning. Just a subject matter about being people pleasers, which is easy for any of us to do, right? But I was utilizing a book, or part of it was utilizing a book, Ed Welch.
Yes.
When people are big and God is small. There's some really excellent material in there. So we just took a Wednesday night and looked through that. So I think it was helpful for us.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about that book from other people before, so I'm sure that's a really good study. Tell us a little bit about where you're at right now, Crystal Springs Baptist Church, and how did you get in that role, and how long have you been there?
We have been here since November, so we are very new at Crystal Spring. It's a blessing, great getting to know people, but we're there's a bit of revitalization going on, and I think that everyone would agree to that. When you lose a pastor, and God sent him somewhere else. He's actually a professor at Liberty University, but God sent him on, and they were for a time without a pastor, and especially here on the back end of the pandemic and everything, it was very, very difficult. So we've been coming in, and we're already seeing God do some wonderful things and bringing some new people to the church. We're not far from the hospital from Carillion, in the Crystal Spring neighborhood. So it's been really wonderful getting to know people in the community, and just being there and sharing the word every Sunday, and enjoying that together, and just getting to know the people in my church, which takes time. That's been
Sure.
our big priority right now, is
Yeah.
just getting to know each other and build relationships, and just seeing God build that bond of love between us, as we serve one another in love.
Well, a few hours down the road, I want to talk a little bit about your early upbringing. And one of the things that excited me, we talked about this before we got on. I was sort of turned on to who you were by accident on Twitter. You had responded to a gentleman that I think a post either he or I put up, and you mentioned that you were from the area of Gate City, Virginia. And I thought, boy, I've got to get this guy on the podcast. So tell us a little bit about your early upbringing and childhood, and what life was like for you as a young man.
Well, I was raised in Hilton's, Virginia, and of course, Gate City. That's when you're going to town, right? When you go to Gate City. But I was raised in the Hilton's area, and so I was raised in a house, Jeremiah, with a dad who was not a Christian, and my mother was a Christian, and she exposed me took me to church, exposed me to the gospel, and I came to know Christ at a very young age, and that was confirmed as years went on. My faith grew, and I was thankful for a pastor in a small missionary Baptist church there. His name was Larry Bells. He was a truck driver, bivocational, and but he preached faithfully in that church. He would give me responsibilities. He trusted me with putting stuff on the sign. I couldn't believe it. He gave me keys to the church to do work, and because he baptized me, which is the most important thing.
Yeah.
I was baptized when I was 13, and I was kind of delayed on that. I don't know why I was putting it off, but he finally told me, because he he knew I love Jesus. He knew that so that was my passion, and he said, "You need to get baptized, boy." So I finally got baptized in the river, and of course it had to be in November, but I was
It
baptized
had to be,
in
yeah.
the North Fork of the Holston River. So that was the early part. There were some difficulties because of my dad. My passion for God came in conflict with his lack of love for Christ, and so we had some challenges. I had some challenges growing up, and you kind of felt like at times you were fighting to follow Jesus, and the things you experience as a kid, and then going into high school, Gate City High School, the big Gate City High School.
The big Gate City High School. Did you have a lot of Christian friends growing up?
It feels like God would give me a Christian friend, at least one, every step of the way.
Yeah.
I had some friends that fell away in early teenage years from following the Lord, but God would give me another one. Usually somebody that had just come to know Christ, so they were in a, we call it cage stage sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Zealous.
Right.
So they would always get me motivated, but I was always thankful for that. So, when I finally made it to Gate City High School, you had to survive. Back then, you had to survive junior high school, and that's the middle school. But when I got there, I had everybody wants to play football. It seems like when they go
Sure.
to Gate City, and I had been raised to revere Gate City football. And you see that statue, that ominous
Right.
statue. What high school has a statue like that? Nobody. We're in a football town, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to play, and I played finally, and was just trying to fit in. I wanted you go through those stages when you're young, and but I always realized I didn't really fully fit in. And when I tried to be cool, really sometimes I was just dumb.
Yeah.
And God just I don't know. There was turmoil at home at the time when I was playing football, and God humbled me, and then God put another believer in my life. His name was Wes Atkins, and he was the kind of guy that would go around the hallways at Gay City. This was a time where I don't know what it's like now or what it was like when you were there, but it didn't seem like being a Christian was something that was encouraged or cultivated. Like
Sure.
You were a very if you were a zealous believer, we'll say. Wes was zealous. He would go around the hallway and he would give tracts out to the teachers.
Oh, wow.
And I can remember there was a time when you had that part of you wanting to fit in, and I would look around the corner, hide and watch him witness to a teacher. But God started to give me boldness while we were friends. He was a senior, I was a junior. I quit football, and I just focused on my walk with the Lord, and I started engaging other people who some that were lukewarm Christians, and and we started to grow. We started to grow in our fellowship with each other, and you get that nickname, the God Squad, right? It just seems like it always happens. But we, but God did some things during that time, and I was just grateful for that. And my faith strengthened as you're challenged, and when you're trying to live for the Lord, and you're a teenager in high school. But I became also charismatic at that time. I was raised in an independent Baptist church, and that's just a part I won't go into too far. But I started to attend a church in Kingsport at the time that no longer exists now, but it was a very large charismatic church there in Kingsport with my friend Wes, and so those were my high school years.
Was your mom on board with that as well? And your dad, you talked about quitting football. How did that settle at home?
My dad, I don't know that he cared one way or another about football. He was a big basketball athlete when he was in school, so he didn't even like football. I played a little bit of basketball at Gate City, but we can't talk about that now because there are people that have played there that are winning slam dunk competitions.
Yeah, no kidding.
So
yeah,
I'm not even going to say I even tried, but but that was just contention that was there even going into college with my dad, because he just didn't see things my way. I was praying about going to a Christian college, and he kind of talked me out of. He didn't talk me out of it. I prayed about it. He said, "You can go there if you want, but then there's now it's University of Virginia. Wise was Clinch Valley College.
right.
That you could go there, and that would make more sense, right?" He was just thinking like a person who just trying to be practical.
Sure.
And I prayed about it, and God just assured me. I just felt an assurance that God was going to take care of me there. I knew what I could be facing because it wasn't easy in high school.
Yeah.
And so I went, and that really, that going there, as would be for anyone going to college, it changes the trajectory of things in your life.
Did you know what you wanted to do out of high school going there?
I think that deep down I wanted to preach,
Okay.
but I'd never tell anyone.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons was because I had a friend who at one time preached, and then he fell away from the Lord.
Mm.
And I think that I thought, am I sincere in my desire? Is this truly God putting this in my heart? So I didn't tell anybody for years, but I did have a desire to teach. I have a passion, as I know we share,
Yeah.
particularly for history and that area of study. And I wanted to pursue that. I didn't know if that was going to take me into being a lawyer, or because that's what lawyers do. I don't know why. They do that. So I thought, well, I'll major in history, and then later on I took on education and political science. So that was at least what I focused on.
Did you teach coming right out of college, or was there some sort of a transition period there?
I taught, yes. I went on to teach in Scott County schools.
Okay. I think you told
Yes.
me it was at Rye Cove High School. Is that right?
I taught at
Yeah.
Rye Cove for a short time.
What
And
subjects did they have you teaching there?
well, I was teaching. Well, this is funny. I was teaching. I was teaching world history
Okay.
and sociology and advanced English
Oh, wow.
and keyboarding,
Uh-oh.
which for me, that was humorous for me because I think I was a terrible keyboarder. But that was just some of the classes that
Yeah.
I taught there.
And
So
how long were you at Rye Cove?
just 1 year at Rock Cove, and then I went on to teach at Dungannon Intermediate
Okay.
School. But it was just a short time before the Lord. We might be getting ahead of ourselves, but just a short time before the Lord uh, had other plans for me.
Yeah, that's
But
where I was going next. We'll go ahead and
yeah,
hit on that. Is that the time you? I guess I'll just use the term like announced your call to preach, or did you just decide I need to go to seminary and maybe get some things under my belt first?
yeah. Well, we can go back to college because I
Okay.
need to tell you something
Yeah.
about college because this is very intricate. Um, the whole time I was there, I was very outspoken for Christ. We would meet in what's called the every morning in the Chapel of All
Yeah.
Faiths. You know where that is?
I've preached there many times. Yeah.
So when I was there, we would jokingly call it the Chapel of No Faith because that thing
That
is
joke
used for
stuck around.
everything.
Like we kept
There's
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
At our time, there were Unitarians that met there on Sunday morning.
Oh, okay.
So Unitarians, they believe we just call it the Chapel of No Faith, and but we would meet some guys that were Navy SEALs and some other brothers and sisters that started to meet, and we got a reputation on campus as we grew, and there were people that were athletes or people just doing following different paths, but God was doing a work in their lives. We ended up, and I'm sort of ashamed of this now, Jeremiah, but we baptized people in Greer gymnasium pool right
Yeah.
there connected. I don't know if it's still there,
It is. Yeah.
but we baptized people and with no church oversight, which I heard that the church I was going to didn't particularly like
Yeah.
that we were doing that, which at the time when you're young you don't think about the connection
Sure.
that there should be to a local church. But that was what was going on. And then there was a church that I was involved in starting there, evangelical, but also charismatic, Pentecostal. I was involved in, they met in an old bar and grill. We tore up the dance floor and started having church there, which, the fruit of that, well, you've heard of Jimmy Mitchell. Jimmy
Yeah.
Mitchell was a youth pastor there at that time. Now he's a pastor in Norton. Um, After I left college, and let's go back to where I'm a public school teacher now.
Okay.
My wife started attending University of Virginia Wise, and Jimmy was still serving at this church, and he meets her and he leads her to the Lord.
Wow.
and disciples her. So my wife Amy came to faith through that church and Jimmy Mitchell's ministry.
Wow, I did
And
not
so
know that. Yeah, small world.
yeah, so I would come back and visit, and she was there. But at the same time, I was teaching, but God was really working on my heart about ministry, and I started serving as a youth pastor at First Baptist Church, Gate City, and it was there that it just became solidified.
Yeah.
So I was kind of like a recovering charismatic at that point. I didn't have all my theology together yet, and I eventually left the that church and was asked to be the interim pastor at not far from you at Fairview
Yes.
in Fairview at Zion Baptist Church, a little country
Yes.
church.
I know exactly what you're
Um,
talking about.
so I went to the back country,
Okay.
but Duffield's the city now. That's like I'm just amazed at the growth of that place.
Yeah.
But back then I went there. So Amy and I started dating, and she got to go and see what it was going to be like to be married to a pastor. So we were dating. She'd come to church with me, watch me preach, and deal with the people in that church, in that congregation, who were not easy people.
Yeah.
Just to tell you, if there was going to be any doubt of whether God called me, there was where I met my challenge, and God still just affirmed to me that He was calling me to the ministry. And so we went. Amy and I were married, and went on to and the school that I went to is Southeastern Seminary, Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary in Wake
How
Forest.
long? How long were you at Zion?
The whole time I was in college.
Okay. Yeah. And then you mentioned you and Amy got married. Did you all get married at the church that you were interim at?
No, actually, we went back to First Baptist Gate City.
Okay. Yeah. Who was the? By the way, who was the pastor there at First Baptist Gate City when you were youth pastor?
That's a good question. So Larry Redding was a pastor there,
Okay.
and this was my first exposure to expository preaching.
Hmm.
When I heard Larry preach, it was different than anything that I'd heard. I had heard someone with discipline preach through a book of the Bible. So I tried to mimic him. When I went to be an interim pastor, you know what I did? I preached one sermon through the book of Nehemiah, and it lasted about an hour and a half. And there was a retired minister sitting in that congregation. He literally fell asleep.
Oh no. Yeah, that's rough. Yeah. Now you mentioned going to Southeastern. Why there? Like, did you know somebody there? Is there something that just drew you there?
It wasn't my first choice. We were looking at Southern
Okay.
Seminary, and it so happens at that time they were still in I'll call it recovery mode. Al Mohler had come there. It
Yes.
become
Okay.
a very liberal school.
Yeah.
And he came, and there was a transformation. But I visited, and the friends that I knew that were there at the time, I just don't think that they truly got how liberal it had become. And they would just give me all kinds of negative feedback about what was happening. And I think when you're investing in your education, you think, is this the best time to go to that school?
Right.
And Southeastern had also went through that process. And Paige Patterson actually was the president there at the time. In the Southern Baptist Convention, the conservative resurgence was taking place. And I didn't know everything about that. But I knew I wanted to go to a conservative school that taught sound theology.
Yeah.
And at that time, there was a great faculty at Southeastern, and I felt that the a peace about going there. So that's where we went, and Amy also got a counseling degree. So some of our core classes we were able to take together. And that was a blessing.
Who were some of your better professors there?
There's some that aren't there now, but I would say, systematic theology was something that I needed. I needed to have that foundation. And John Hammett at that time just had a and he's put out some books that maybe you've seen, but it was just really good and solid, thorough all the way through, and really gave me some a good foundation. Another guy by the name of Puckett did church history, and again, as we both appreciate history, I had not heard the presentation of Christian history, the way that it was presented all the way through from early church, to understand, and it was so instructive to understand biblically how to serve in a church, just essentials of the church and the connection to theology.
You broke up there. You were talking about the essentials of Christian theology there when it cut off on us. So if you want to pick up there, that's fine.
The connection, between theology and Christian history, and understanding, every controversy, all those things that have happened, and why it's important for now. Which me and my wife, when we would go in these classes, we would come home and talk about it. We'd say, why didn't anyone tell us about this stuff? Why didn't we ever hear about it? It was amazing it really opened our eyes, and gave, I think, both of us a passion to want to see that in church, to see people instructed in a way that they're fully equipped and taught, to maturity. And again, the Bible classes and everything, all of that played a role in that. Not just those, but just the whole orb of study, to give us a desire to want to bring that to the local church.
Yeah, I agree. I remember the first time I was actually exposed to genuine church history, and I mean, it just rocked my world. Here's a guy that had A, got a degree in history, and then B, had been teaching it at a local high school. And I remember being exposed to it and thinking, my goodness, I just feel like I've had to relearn everything. Not in a terrible way, and I'm not trying to undermine anything that I had learned before that, but it was as if I had only gotten half of everything. Mm-hmm. And there was this whole other portion here that I was just aloof to, I guess. And I also thought, I'm with you, it just lit a fire under me. Preaching, prayer, Bible study, appreciation for the Bible. I mean, everything just came alive so much more when I realized, there was life after this first century church that was so significant that we've just kind of left out, I think, sometimes. But I want to touch on really quickly the fact that you really got into biblical languages. I think that might be your degree. Is that right?
That was part of the requirement, was that at that time every MDiv student would have biblical languages, Hebrew and Koine Greek, in their degree.
Yes. How much has that played a role into your sermon prep?
Well, I think that it helps me. I do not want to claim to be any kind of Greek scholar or Hebrew scholar, because even though it's required, you're just getting your feet wet in the biblical languages, and enough to where that you can look at the Greek New Testament and be able to discern words and the significance of those words and their usage, and it helps you. It's an aid. But I have to be honest. Sometimes I have to lean on some really good technical commentaries to get fuller into that, because you don't want to mess that up either.
Right.
Because there's some people, it's like, you think where that's going, and you really need to lean on some people that have done the study a bit more than you. But I still glean from it, and those words can be utilized. You got to be careful when you're sharing with a congregation, because it can be over their head. You start to share, and I've seen guys do this, and they're really into the Greek, but people, if they've not had that or some exposure to that, it's hard to follow unless you're just giving them some simple words and helping them kind of see the significance of where that language study brings out the meaning
Yeah.
in the passage, because that's what you want, right? You want to
Right.
understand it better.
What's the best lesson you think you learned at seminary?
Wow, the best lesson. Um,
Or maybe biggest takeaway? Maybe not necessarily a lesson, but what's the best thing you might have just taken with you out of there?
I think that, well, you get exposed to a lot of different people. You meet a lot of people that are preparing for ministry, and even getting to know your professors. That if your heart isn't right, it doesn't matter how much knowledge of the Bible or history, any of these things we're talking about, if it hasn't made an impact on your heart and truly the gospel hasn't affected your walk with the Lord, then you're going to totally miss it.
Yeah.
And you're just going to be puffed up. And there's plenty of people that have not had a seminary education that God has used for his glory.
True.
Because they were students of the word, but they also applied it to their heart.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing I could say that I could take away from
Yeah,
that.
that's good. Yeah. You mentioned a little bit about your personal life. You and Amy had gotten married just right before that. How long before y'all had kids?
Good question. So we wanted to have kids, and for a while we could not. And we saw other couples struggle with this.
Yeah.
And I think that when we watched them struggle, we, and we started to try to have kids, as people say, you try to have kids. God gives them to us.
Right.
But we were having trouble. And I think one of the things that we had to give to God is, if it's God's will for us to have children, He will grant us children.
Yeah.
And if it isn't, He has another plan.
That's
we
good.
really had to think that way, because it started to really, I think, discourage us.
Right.
But when we did that and we just gave that to God, He blessed us. Blessed us with not one, but eventually two kids.
Yeah.
But the first one was born when we were at Southeastern.
Okay.
Graham was born, who's now at Liberty University.
Okay.
So.
And your youngest is how old?
My youngest is Abigail, and she just turned 21.
Okay.
And a day later, married.
Wow.
Married Moses, my son-in-law. So we're grateful for him and how God's put them together.
Did you get to officiate the wedding?
What was that?
Did you get to officiate the wedding?
I did.
There you go. Yeah.
I gave my daughter away, and I officiated the wedding.
A lot of tears.
What was that, Jeremiah?
A lot of tears.
I was successful in holding them back until my last prayer for them. And it started, there it comes.
Yeah.
But everything was an answered prayer. We started praying before we had children for whoever would marry.
Wow, that's good.
Our children.
Yeah.
And I don't say that to brag.
Right.
It was just something we thought to do. We wanted to pray for the parents that were raising whoever may marry our children. And my son isn't married presently, but we pray those prayers.
Sure. Have you found it difficult? I know a lot of ministers, I think, probably beat themselves up over this. I understand it now as a father and a husband, but do you find or have found balancing life and ministry hard?
Yes.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of guilt that goes with it. I'm not trying to overtake the conversation here, but
go ahead.
I think in talking to a lot of people, and even my own experience, probably there's a lot that weighs on the minister, that there will be people that need your help.
Mm-hmm.
often. And that's what we've given our life to. That's what God's called us to, is gospel ministry. And that is far more than filling a pulpit on a Sunday morning or an evening or a Wednesday night. Although I think any minister would tell you that's the joy of what we do.
Sure.
The real labor comes when you walk out of there. Um, and it's hard sometimes. I think people are a little foreign to what really goes on, and the time that's spent, and the burden that's there, because you want to spend so much time pouring into your own family, and
Yes.
at the same time there's this great weight over here that is extremely important that God has called you to. It is not light, and you do have to dedicate yourself to it. And that's a hard balance. And I don't know if I've ever met a minister who would say that it was easy or that they've handled it well, even. I think most men are humble enough to admit that that might be the hardest part of it, to be honest.
I think you're right, and that's why that if I'm sure maybe there's some in some situations where it's just been really a good going situation, and they never have any conflict, they never
Right.
have any disagreements, never have things that, and as with the regular weekly burden, and it's a burden to bear, it's a burden of joy
Yeah.
to bear the responsibility of preaching in the pulpit every week, and we want to bear that. It's a joy in that. That shouldn't be a burden that leaves us joyless. But the other responsibilities at times can so occupy your mind
Mm-hmm.
that when you're even present with your loved ones, it's very hard to be there like you wish you could.
Yeah.
And I wish that there was a simple solution for that. But sometimes it's just there.
Yeah.
And
You're
you
right.
do the best you can. And that's what I would tell a brother. Those times are going to come, and you'll in principle say, I'm going to do the quality time, or I'm going to cut out the time to be with my family. And you should. But the reality is there's going to be times where your mind is still going to be occupied, even though you're giving it to the Lord, because it's just the struggle that you're in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know. I wish there was an easy way to say that, but I think it's the reality of ministry.
Right. I think if anything, and that's well put, by the way, I think if anything, it really shows the grace of God in holding things together that are obviously just out of our hands. I mean, we're just finite, limited people. Scripture says we are dust of the earth, and sometimes I think we forget that. We can't be in two places at once. We'd love to sometimes. Our mind might be, but we just physically can't do that. And so I think of all the things out there, if you're listening to this and you're not a pastor, if there's anything you could pray for, I would highly encourage people to be much more gracious in that area, and much more prayerful for your shepherds.
Yes.
I think that would go above and beyond for them if they thought more like that for their pastor. But having said that, you get out of seminary, and I was looking over your bio on your church website, and I thought, man, this guy's a Johnny Cash song. He has been everywhere, man. um, Fill us in, if you can. I don't know. It may take a minute or two, but after seminary, how in the world did you end up from Wisconsin to Washington D.C. and Virginia, and how did all that work together?
Well, I was pastoring a church in Bluefield,
What
Virginia,
Virginia? Okay.
and then we can't talk about all these places. We'll be here forever.
Yeah, like I said,
I'm
you're
starting
the
to feel
epitome of the
old,
song. Yeah.
Jeremiah. But we got called to the Washington D.C. area. I called to be the pastor of Woodlawn Baptist Church, which is in Alexandria, and that was a challenging situation. We were in a church that when you're in that area, you've got a lot of military, a lot of government, and so there's always a revolving door. Even though we don't
Right.
want that in any of our churches, and so the challenge is to, you know, encourage commitment while you're there, and to strengthen them. But I had people that were in all branches of the military. I had a senator and his wife under watch care.
Wow.
I had congressmen that would come and visit, had their staffs that would come. I'm just giving you the whole gamut.
Sure,
We had
sure.
people that were that were new to our country. So we would have them knocking on the door. We'd have them visiting. I'll never forget one Sunday we had an Iraqi looking in the window, peeping in the window while I was preaching. That caused alarm. We got guys that they're protecting the Secretary of Defense.
Wow.
On a regular basis. They got up and went out and did a sweep of the property when
My
he
goodness.
just wanted a job. He didn't want to do any harm. So they walked him into the church while I was preaching, had him sit down, and he heard the gospel, and met him afterwards. He just wanted something to do. So one of our lieutenant colonels said, "Come back and you can fix the baptistry." He comes back and he works on the baptistry, and he says, "What is this for?" And I get to share the gospel.
Wow.
That's just a day in the life of that church.
That's a great story. Yeah.
But we, it was an amazing time we were there. My children were growing up in Washington, D.C., but there was a point where we left because it was a lot of different things that happened at once, and which happens providentially, even though sometimes we don't particularly like it sometimes. But we left there because it was a financial hardship more than anything.
Wow.
It's a very challenging place to live in Washington, D.C. area. But I left there for a time to go and serve as a corporate chaplain in Green Bay, Wisconsin. So that's what happened at the end of that.
How long were you in Green Bay?
We were in Green Bay over 8 years.
Wow. Did that fully convert you to a cheesehead, or?
You really have no choice.
Yeah, I figured there's really nothing else there.
There are people that are fans of other things, but I think because of what I was trying to accomplish, because I was basically like a missionary.
Okay.
In that city, I served one company and had over 1,500 employees.
Wow.
I was around the city every day. So people are going to ask you, are you a fan? I don't like the word fan, to be honest, but I would say, I didn't say it just to appease them. I've always liked the Packers. We get it honest, and right where we went to college, Carroll Dell.
Carroll Dell.
About Carroll Dell and his Super Bowl rings.
Yeah. And
that would be a good segue into conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to share the gospel in the city of Green Bay for several years, and I don't regret that. And I preached around Wisconsin while I was there, churches that would need someone to preach, and we served in a local church while we were there. But
how different was that, by the way? I mean, you're coming from, technically the South, really, and then here you are in Wisconsin. I know the geography is different, the climate, but what about the church climate? Like, how was that transitioning into it?
Well, that was an interesting thing. There are definitely less, let's just say, Baptist churches.
Right.
In Green Bay, you've got a lot of Catholic churches.
Sure.
A lot of Lutheran churches of different Lutheran churches of different stripes.
Yeah.
We'll say, there are some conservative Lutheran churches, but that was different. The way you interact with people of those backgrounds and the way you share the gospel with them is sometimes going to be a little different. The way that you introduce them to the truth. The church that I attended for the biggest part of the time I was there was just down from Lambeau Field. And so they met every Sunday. That church was there before Lambeau Field was built.
Wow.
And you could look out the side window in the sanctuary and literally see the stadium and the Jumbotron. They usually let out before 12.
Yeah.
But everybody most people were there on Sunday morning, even when, not all games start at 12.
Sure.
But they were there worshiping. on
That's
Sunday
great.
morning,
Yeah.
as for many of the evangelical congregations around there. They didn't alter their schedule for the Packers. So,
What brought you out of Green Bay? Like, what made the transition for you?
well, deep down, I knew, I felt like if it was the Lord's will, that I would be serving in a local church again as a pastor. That's been my heart, and I think my wife knew that. We didn't want to just jump into another church. I wanted to go where the Lord would have us, and the circumstances and situation, the Lord opened the door for us to come to Roanoke and serve at Crystal Spring Baptist Church. And as they asked us, and I won't go into all the details of how that came about, but it became evident that God was calling us here.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful that they asked me to come and serve as their pastor.
Sure. Roanoke's a great place. I mean, I've been there multiple times. You and I talked before. I have some good friends that live in that area, and I've been up there multiple times. I've had the good fortune and God's grace to be able to preach there in that area a few times before.
Wonderful.
And I've always enjoyed my time there. I think the world of a lot of those people up there. And so, shout out to all those guys that may be listening, particularly the Maciel family. I don't know if they listen to this or not, but they have been more than kind to me and keeping me up in their home a few times. And their son Victor is a very close friend of mine, and just think the world of those guys up there. So that's why when we first got on, I asked you what you thought about the star up there in Roanoke. So
Yes.
have you visited that yet?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Yeah. So you're an official.
I know somebody that lives just down below the star.
Okay. Do
So
they like that?
great.
Is that too much light for them, or?
They don't seem to complain. I think they really like it.
Okay. I didn't
really
know.
Like it.
I feel like that would just feel like you had the lights on all the time if you were that close.
Yeah, you'd think, but I think they enjoy their place. But yes, we've been up there, and I've always when I think of Roanoke, that's what I always think about too. Is that big star up there?
Yeah. Now, do you get to now that y'all have moved back? I guess I'm going to say to the area, so to speak. Do you get the chance to come back to Scott County or the Wise County area, wherever y'all might have some family and friends?
We try. We're still feel kind of fresh here, but
sure,
that is an advantage that we can get back more often.
Yeah.
So we definitely aim to do that. My mother lives there still, and my in-laws and other relatives. So we certainly want to be back there more often. But I want to say this, Jeremiah. It is, to me, even before we met, when I knew about what you were doing and some of your other brothers that are serving there in the Kingsport area and in Scott County, it just blessed my heart.
Mm.
When I lived there and just knowing the needs there of sound churches that preach the gospel,
yeah,
and disciple people with love and care for their souls, it just encouraged me, and I'm grateful for you, Jeremiah. I'm so glad that you are there doing that along with others that are serving and encouraging you right now in that work.
Well, I appreciate that. We thank God for people like you who laid the groundwork for it. And leave a good testimony behind, and we're glad to have you back in the Southwest Virginia area. So, albeit on different ends of Southwest Virginia, but yeah, we're glad to have you back, and thank you for being on tonight. I want to ask you one more question before we transition here and a little bit into the interview. But you've had the privilege of a long ministry stint, and God clearly has been very kind to you and given you a lot of work to do, and I think you've accomplished that well. If you had one piece of advice for young ministers, or maybe if you could go back and talk to Travis Hilton, as a young man, what would you say to him?
I would say be patient.
Hmm.
And everything you do for the long haul, not for the short term.
Yeah.
Because you will have discouragement, but sometimes that discouragement comes from unrealistic expectations.
True.
We know that God can do above what we ask or think, but we also know that we have to trust Him in the moment we're in.
Yeah.
And with what He's given us in this moment to do, and not think about the next moment or what the other church is doing, because God's given you certain people to serve, and God knows their hearts, and He knows what they need, and He's put you there for that reason, and that's what you're to focus on right now.
Yeah, that's really
and
well
your family.
put. Yeah, that's sound. I mean, that really is sound. I hope if there's young ministers out there, I would echo everything you just said. That's really well put. So, let's transition here. No great segue, I guess, to this, but we love doing this. Anytime we get to talk to ministers on here and kind of look at their biography and sort of reminisce about their life a little bit, we always like to end, I guess, on a little bit of lighthearted note, and we like to give them 10 very fun questions here, just quick rapid fire for the audience to get to listen to. So if you're ready, I'm ready over here.
Okay.
All right, here we go. What's the best movie you've ever seen?
Okay. That's a good question. There's a couple that are rivals for that right now as far as just regular movies.
Okay.
I always liked Gettysburg.
Yes, okay.
See, it's history.
Yeah, you're a man after my own heart. Yeah.
Coming out. I was thinking of one I saw with my son. 1917.
Yes. Yeah.
Is one of those that I'm going to have to see it again.
Yeah.
That one was pretty incredible.
Really well done. Yeah, really well done. Yeah. All right, here's the second one. Where's the furthest country you've ever traveled to?
Wisconsin.
Okay.
No, I have not been outside the
wow.
U.S.
Is Wisconsin the furthest place you've traveled to?
No. Arizona is close to Mars. So
yeah.
I've been there.
That'll work, yeah. 3. This one should be fairly simple. What's your favorite Bible verse?
My favorite one. It should be simple. All things work together for the good of those who are called according to His purpose.
Yeah, that is good. Yeah. Here's a good one. I don't know if I know you've been sipping on something this entire time, but it may not be the answer. Would you rather have coffee or sweet tea?
Oh, definitely coffee.
There you go. Yeah.
I wouldn't do sweet tea.
Okay.
I had to do away with that a long time ago.
Yeah, I didn't know if you were sipping on sweet tea there. I couldn't tell. So
this is hot tea.
Hot tea.
It's
okay.
A special Harney and Sons hot cinnamon spice.
Okay, but you're definitely a coffee guy, I guess. Yeah.
Coffee's the best.
Yeah. Least favorite household chore?
Cleaning the toilets.
Okay. Yeah, I can amen that. Yeah. Here's a good one. Last sermon that you preached?
The last sermon that I preached was, it was on the Sermon on the Mount.
Okay.
That was last Sunday.
Yeah.
I did have a byline for it. You stumped me on the, had to do with, learning to love your enemies. That's what we were learning last week.
There you go.
Learning to love your enemies.
That's good. Number 7, would you rather have cake or cookies?
That's a tough one. I think I'd go with the cake.
What kind?
Chocolate.
There you go. Yeah. Number 8, favorite vacation destination?
Oh, wow. Okay. When I would go on a vacation, where would I go? Pretty much anywhere on the Blue Ridge Parkway, which isn't far from where I am right now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, more of a mountain guy. Yeah.
So I'm a mountain man.
Yeah.
My wife would prefer the beach.
Yeah, okay, I got you. Yeah. I'm probably a beach guy if I had to pick. Yeah. Although
So
my
if I
skin
want to be
complexion,
happy,
yeah,
if I want her to be happy, me be happy,
you'll go
I'm
to
going
the
to probably
beach.
go to
Yeah,
Myrtle Beach,
yeah,
somewhere like that.
I hear you. Number 9. This is one I've been wanting to ask somebody for a while. I think this would be good for you. One minister from yesteryear that you'd like to have dinner with.
Martin Lloyd Jones.
Okay. How come?
I just, I'm amazed at his preaching.
Yeah.
Um, and now that we have even more, it seems like, of a treasure trove of the audio of his preaching. Because he didn't particularly like to be recorded.
Right.
But now we have, it seems like, more of it. Um, I think he fascinates me. His style and the content. I just love to meet him.
Yeah, that's a good pick. All right, number 10. I had to do this just because you're from the Hilton's Gate City area. And you've traveled, so this might be an interesting answer. And remember, a lot of people are listening locally, so just keep that in mind when you answer this. Does Pal's make the best French fries you've ever had?
Oh wow, that's a tough one. Frenchy fries.
Yeah.
Um, well, I gotta say yes. I
Okay.
mean, of course,
I think that's the safe answer.
yes. Yeah. Well, every time we come home, we try. We get, we have to sneak down
Yeah.
and get the chipped ham, the pow burger.
Yeah.
There's nothing like that.
That's true. I think
So
it's the place to go when
yes.
you're in the area. Yeah. Well, there it is. There's 10 of them from Travis Hilton, so I feel like everybody's going to know him so much better now. So if you want to get him something, chocolate cake apparently needs to be on the menu. So there you have it. But hey, brother, we appreciate you being on. I want to give you some time here right now. If folks are listening from the Roanoke or greater Roanoke area and they're looking for a solid Bible preaching, Bible teaching church led by a sound minister, let us in on a little bit of information about how people can find you guys, maybe online, and your address and times of services.
Okay, so we meet every Sunday, every Lord's Day at 11, and love for anyone to come and join us for that. We have Sunday school before that at 10, and so the website is crystalspringbc.com, and you can find us on the website if you look for Crystal Spring Baptist Church in Roanoke, Virginia. And so we would just love for you to come.
Yeah.
If you're looking.
You personally, I know you have Facebook and Twitter, so people can find you on there. I'd encourage you to go follow Travis on Twitter. I know you're fairly active on there, and you're putting up things from time to time, so you'd be a good follow for folks. And on Facebook as well. So if you're looking to find Travis on social media, those would be two good ones. Do you have any other platforms that you're on?
That's it.
Okay, yeah, I'm same here. That's the only two I kind of operate. So if you're looking to find Travis again, you can find him there on Twitter and on Facebook. Again, their website there that he just mentioned to you, times of service, and again, church service there at Crystal Springs Baptist Church in Roanoke, Virginia. Brother, I'd really appreciate you being on tonight. Thank you for taking time out and linking up with us here online and for a really good interview. I appreciate that.
It's great to be with you, Jeremiah. Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, and don't forget, guys, if you haven't subscribed, hit us on that like button there. And make sure you follow us on our Facebook group page. And we want to remind you, if you haven't done so already, and I mentioned this earlier in the broadcast, please go ahead and register for our Deeply Rooted Conference coming up this year, November 10th and 11th. That's going to be in the Tri-Cities area here in Northeast Tennessee. We're excited about all the lineup we have. We're going to center everything this year around the doctrine of assurance. We're pleased to have Brother Mike Abendroth coming in from Massachusetts. He's going to be our keynote speaker there for the conference. We've also got a lineup of other local ministers as well, so we're really excited about hearing those gentlemen teach and preach for us there at the conference. A lot of those will be other sessions besides Brother Abendroth, and we're going to do it over 2 days, so Friday and Saturday, as I mentioned, November 10th and 11th. So go ahead and get those early bird rates. You can find that there at deeplyrootedpodcast.com. You can register and sign up there. Again, I mentioned try to get the early bird rates. As time goes on, we will have to increase here as we get closer to time. So we had a tremendous time last year at the very first annual one. Just a good time of fellowship, sound preaching and teaching, and I just could not say enough about our time of worship together as well. If you were there last year, you know what I'm talking about, and get the word out again. I think this year is going to be special. So if you haven't registered again, that's deeplyrootedpodcast.com. That's on the upcoming ministry schedule there. You can register there right online and be a part of the Deeply Rooted Conference coming up again November 10th and 11th this year in the Tri-Cities area in Northeast Tennessee. So Travis, maybe you can hop on down with us. That'd be great, and come on down and be a part of what we're doing.
I'm putting it on my calendar. We're going to
Yeah.
see if we can make that happen, Jeremiah.
Yeah, we got to put a face out there for everybody now that you've been on the podcast. So we'll try to round up all the people that've been on there and maybe get a group photo or something. So it should be a good time.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, well, brother, I hope you have a tremendous week. And folks, thank you again for tuning in, for all your support. And we hope you have a great week in Jesus.